Name Banks, and I'm a real alcoholic. Waylon hit it dead on when he was up here a while ago. Working with drunks is my personalized MO, because that's the only way I can keep what I got is to give it away. And getting out of self and focusing on somebody else, when I do that, I don't have to worry about my stuff too often. And it's good to be back down here with you people. I've been down here 2 or 3 times before. And I'm going to get some preliminaries out of the way. My sobriety date is August the 10th, 2003. Through God's grace and His power, through the program of Alcoholics Anonymous and through you people, I haven't found it necessary to unplug the jug. I do have a home group as the Emeraldwood group in High Point, 1300 Country Club Drive. We meet there 3 times a week, Tuesday night at 8 o'clock for a big book study, Friday night at 8 o'clock for a 12 and 12, and Saturday night at 8 o'clock for an open discussion meeting. Having a home group in my sobriety is very instrumental because that's the strongest link between the program and the alcoholic. That's what the home group stands for. And if you're not satisfied or happy with your home group, stay where you're at and don't go screw nobody else's up. And now I do have a sponsor, and I have many generations of a long line of rock solid sponsorship. And I believe good sponsorship is very important because I tried to sponsor myself for a long time. And that's the only thing it did. It kept getting me drunk for a long, long time also. But anyway, if something eating my lunch, and if I can't get hold of my sponsor, I'll go to his sponsor and so on. And I respect and I treasure their sobriety enough. I'll be willing to give any of them a 5th step. My job is to tell you my story, how it was, what happened, and how it is now. I was born in Burlington in Alamance County Hospital on December the 11th, 1962. I was the youngest of 3. I had 2 older sisters. My daddy was a full-blown alcoholic. My mama was real religious and real spiritual. And I had a long list of alcoholics on my daddy's side of the family, and every one of them died as a direct result of untreated alcoholism. My daddy died, his 2 brothers, I had an aunt that died, and 2 first cousins. Every one died in that same pattern. And my mama, she was a real religious woman, and she was a big-time Jerry Falwell follower. And I can remember at an early age, every Sunday morning, you know, she used to go in there in the living room and turn on that little 13-inch black and white TV and adjust them rabbit ears on top. And she'd sit in there and watch Jerry Falwell preach his sermon every Sunday morning. And that was what got her motor going to when then she took us to church on Sunday morning. And at an early age, we left Burlington. We moved to a place up in Person County called Roxborough. And you know, I hate Wallace ain't here tonight. Me and Wallace we got some family ties up in Person County. Him and my daddy used to ride the school bus together when they were kids. But anyway, it's a small world. He thought it was me, but I told him that was my daddy he rode the school bus with. But anyway, and I lived there, me and my family did, till I was about 10 years old. And I had my first dose of untreated alcoholism long before I ever took that first drink. You know what they say, alcoholism is so strong that it affects people that don't even drink. It affects everything and anything around you. I can remember my dad getting off work one night up at the old cotton mill. And he stopped at a local beer joint and he got probably juiced up. And he came home and my mama had supper on the kitchen table. And he come home and one thing led to another and he snapped and he spattered food all over the kitchen wall. and turned the table bottom side upwards. And that led to separation of my parents. My two older sisters ran away and left me holding the bag. I got a lot of physical abuse in my story, but I'm not going to stand up here and tell the fifth step, and that's all I'm going to say about that. But it did get real ugly. We left there and moved across the state line to South Boston, Virginia, and I lived there for the next 30 years of my life, and had made fairly good grades in school, you know, average, just good enough to get by, and played Little League baseball when I was about 10, 11, 12 years old. And but I copped a real bad resentment about that. My coach always made me ride the pine on the bench because I couldn't run around the bases too fast. That made me rather ill. But anyway, I took my first drink when I was 15 years old. You know, back in them days, you know, legal drinking age was 18, and they didn't have no blue law, so you couldn't buy alcohol on Sunday. I walked in a local pool room down in downtown South Boston, Virginia, and I walked in the door, and the bartender said, "What do you have?" And I didn't know nothing about drinking or nothing like that. I pointed and said, "I have one of them." He said, "Okay, let me hook you up." He went to the freezer and got one of them old frosted beer mugs out of the freezer, and he went to the draft beer with that big long nozzle. He cocked that thing up on a 45-degree angle of that beer mug, pulled that handle back, and he filled it up about 3/4 of the way, so it wouldn't get no head on it. And he went in the refrigerator and he got a can of tomato juice and he filled the rest of it up too. And he had a silver spoon about 18 inches long. That's what he stirred it up with. He said, "Try that." I said, "Okay." I turned it up and drank it. I turned that thing up. It was so good, I'd suck the bottom out of that beer mug if I could have got it. You know what they say? One is good, two is better. And I identified what Dr. Silkworth talked about in the doctor's opinion. You drink that first one and it sets off that phenomenon of craving. My mental obsession tells me it's good and I want me some more. And he gave me another one. And I turned up and drank that thing, you know. But that second one turned into a social lubricant, what the book talks about. You know, I'm sitting there wrapped up with, I'm an egomaniac, see, with an inferiority complex. You know, and alcohol loosened up that inferiority complex. It made me feel 10 foot tall and bulletproof. It made my mouth get loose. It made me mingle. It made me want to talk. It made me want to chunk in quarters in the jukebox and play some of that good party music they have on now. You know, back in the 70s was the height of the disco era. We put on some of that Village People and some of that KC and the Sunshine Band, and we get out there and we cut a step out there in the middle of the floor, you know. And I've had the best times I had in my early alcoholism. From 1978 to 1983, it was party time. It was on like Al Capone. And it couldn't do no wrong. But I didn't have a clue about the progressive illness of alcoholism. You know, I used to love to party, you know. Used to go down to a place called the Bullpen on the lower end of town. They used to have happy hour there on Thursday at 6 o'clock from 6 to 7. Get up in there drinking all that good draft beer. Go out there on the dance floor. You know, the girls come up in there and drink half price. And, but I didn't care nothing about the drinking part. All I wanted to do was go up in there, you know, to be the center of attention. And that ego played a big part in my life of my early alcoholism, you know. And as my disease was progressing, you know, getting into the late 80s, I got first introduced to this program. 1988, when the seed was planted in my life. Old timer at the South Boston group on Thursday night, he hemmed me up in the corner. He said, "Come here, boy. I want to talk to you." I said to myself, "What this man was wearing a 10-gallon horse cart cowboy hat and got a 12-inch cigar stuck in his mouth." But he said again, "Come here, boy. I want to talk to you." I said, "Oh, Lord, what I done now?" Me and him sat down, we had a chat. And he didn't ram this program down my throat. He shared with me about his own drinking. He 12-stepped me in that room that night, and I didn't have a clue what he was doing. And for the next 15 years, from 1988 to 2003, God was working in my life, That seed was planted. I bet you I picked up enough start-over chips in that 15-year span to fill up a 5-gallon bucket. But anyway, I went to my first treatment center, back in the late 80s. This was at Rubicon Rehabilitative Services in Richmond, Virginia. But I was swimming that channel, not talking about a river in Egypt, I didn't care nothing about getting sober. I was just faking the funk, somewhere to satisfy the court or probation officer or what have you. I was going there for all the wrong reasons. And I had a lot of willpower too. That lie that I told myself, I can quit any time I want to. One thing the boat put me 6 foot under. And after I got out of there, I thought everything was cool and everything. I slowly started drinking up jobs. I was slowly drinking my family up and my friends. I was slowly drinking up my self-respect and, everything around me. And until the 90s come around, I got introduced to something called antabuse. And that was a crutch. And I was on it so heavily medicated on antabuse that I was on 2,000 milligrams a day. I taken one every 6 hours. That alcohol couldn't touch the pores of my skin, I was going to take a trip to the hospital. They say if you drink on that stuff, it'd make you so sick you wish you was dead. But anyway, I was drinking up jobs, and alcohol was good. I loved it. I loved to drink. I did. But it's hard to wake up of a morning and you're hungover and you feel so bad that you can't even get up and go to work because alcoholism done made you about to drink your job up. And I'm going to speed this thing up a little bit. In the late 90s, my almighty enabler left me. My mama passed away on September 20th, 1998. And she was my enabler. It didn't make no difference how cold it was outside. I always had a warm bed to sleep in. Didn't make no difference how hungry I got. I always had something to eat. I could beat on her door, and she always was on the other side to let me in. But after she died, that's when my alcoholism escalated full-blown stage. The one thing Bill Wilson said in his story, alcohol became my master. And for the next 3.5 years, I didn't take another sober breath. From September 1998 to February of 2002. Whenever my eyes fly wide open, my disease dictated everything that I did and every move that I made. I had a pretty good money hustle too. I was good at panhandling. You know, I could take an ace wrap and wrap it around my foot and hit them shopping centers, and I'd make me enough bill money to get me by for the rest of the day. And that's just the way I used to go about doing things. February of 2002, I'm going to share with you people how deep God's power really is. I went on a 2-week binge of drinking a liter of Jim Beam and a 3-liter Mountain Dew a day. And I did that for over a week and a half. And then I went in a blackout, and I came to 8 days later out of an alcoholic coma in Halifax Regional Hospital in South Boston, Virginia. And the RN came in there in my room in ICU and asked me, she said, "Do you remember what you did the night that they brought you in?" The only thing I could do was shake my head like that, because I had a 24-inch tube down my throat, and I was in full restraints, hands and feet. And she said, "Sit tight, I'll bring some in here and show it to you." She said, "When the rescue squad brought you in, you went in code blue, and your blood alcohol content was 5.0. And she said they had to take in little zappers and put on your sides and pop you back, because you was dead on arrival on the way to the emergency room." And I stayed in the ICU for 8 days in that alcoholic coma. And the doctor and the RNs gave up on me and said there wasn't nothing they could do. And they was bringing my family in, and they was making my funeral arrangements and everything. You know, God's power runs deep. But one night after that 8th day, I spent the night in a private room. And that next morning, I walked out of that front door just as slick as a whistle, and it wasn't nothing I did, it wasn't nothing those doctors did. God spared my life on that episode, but I couldn't figure out why. If I felt the way that I felt, I just assumed he had took me on away from him. But anyway, for the next 16 months, from February of 02 to July of 03, you know, my ego done took off on a big time plane. You know, I said, "Wow, look at me. I hadn't drank a drop of alcohol for 16 months. Ain't you proud of me?" I called my sister up. I told her I ain't drinking nothing. But, you know, ain't nothing changed on the inside. I was homeless. I was sleeping in the woods on a tree stump, out there in the Mosquito Inn or the Greenleaf Motel, whatever you want to call it. And I stayed out there for 5 solid years from 98 to 03. But anyway, one thing led to another, you know. I lost count at the times that I got cussed out for telling my family members that I was sorry. We already know you're sorry. Tell us something we don't already know. And it got to the point that my family members wouldn't have nothing to do with me. You know, they wouldn't take a phone call from me. And so, anyway, my last drunk started 4th of July of 2003. And I'm going to tell you people a little story of what took place on my last drunk that morning. I was at a Sheetz convenience store. This was at 6 o'clock at the crack of dawn. And I walked in there. They had them sliding door walk-in beer coolers. I got me a 12-pack of Milwaukee Best Blue Ice 6.0. I sat it up on the counter. I had a $10 bill in my pocket to pay for it with, and the lady behind the counter made a drop in the safe. and she didn't have nothing but a bunch of quarters in the cash register. So I paid for it, and she gave me $5 worth of quarters back. And I said, have a nice day, and she said, have a nice day, and I stuck a 12-pack under my arm and went on about my business, you know. And I walked about a good half a mile up the road, and I walked over past a little bitty 4-lane bridge, and I got to the other side of it, and I turned to my right about as far as I had that piano, and I seen something moving out there. It was still dark. I couldn't make out what it was, and I walked up on that thing, and he stuck his tail up, and that thing sprayed, and it was some of that good perfume, and it was a skunk. So I had to retreat and go back across that bridge, and I got to a car wash, and I went up in one of them stalls in the car wash, and I got out, and I shedded some clothes, and I sudsed up with a 5-foot nozzle all the way around, and it didn't knock a dent in that sink. I had to wear it off. Water was rolling off of me, man, and I had to go down through a path and get me a pair of Bermuda shorts out of my little doggy bag and put on. No shirt, no shoes, or nothing. Thank God didn't nobody see me do that. They probably had a 10-car pile up right there in the middle of the road. Anyway, my last drunk lasted for 37 days. And one day, I was sitting on my tree stump. I was drinking beer out of a white styrofoam cooler. I had 2 packs of cigarettes in my pocket, had a little money in my pocket. I listened to a little battery-operated pocket radio, and I thought I had a ride. You know, I thought this is what life was all about. But anyway, you know, a little voice came over me and said, if you don't do something about your drinking, you're going to die. I didn't think no more about it. You know, I kept on popping them tops and having me a good old time. You know, and about 30 minutes go by, and that same voice came over me again. You don't do something about your drinking, you're going to die. But to make a long story short, that was God doing an intervention in my life, and I didn't even know it. And he was working in my life also. You know, I got off that tree stump and walked to a Burger King parking lot, and I got to the pay telephone. I called a 1-800 number to the SCSB. It was the Southside Community Services Board for the Virginia Mental Health. And the lady on the other end said, may I help you? I said, I can't take this no more. I'm tired of living the way I'm living. She said, you are? I said, yeah, I sure am. Anything you got to bring it on, because I'm ready. And she said, sit tight, we'll send somebody after you. And within minutes, they sent 5 police cars of South Boston's finest. You know, I said, what are y'all doing here? I ain't out here shooting or killing nobody. I said, this is procedure, this is what we do. And they broke out the jewelry and put it on me, and put me in the back seat of the car and took me down to the station. And the lady I was talking to was there at the station waiting on me, and she did an assessment on me. And she asked me again, she said, you still want to go through this? I said, yeah, I sure do. So she said, sit tight, let me make some phone calls and see if I can get you a bed somewhere. So that's what she did. She got on the phone rather, and she called treatment centers all over Tidewater, Virginia, in the Richmond, Petersburg, Colonial Heights area, Northern Virginia, Roanoke area. Every place she called that they didn't have no bed. She said, I can't find you a bed nowhere. You still want to go through this? I said, yeah, I sure do. What part didn't you understand? And she said, okay, I ain't got but one more other place to call, and if this place ain't got you no bed, I don't know what to tell you. So she called this place and came back in there and said, I done found you a bed. I said, good, let's go. She said, hold tight, let me fax the paperwork on. So the deputy sheriff put them handcuffs back on me and put me in the back seat of the sheriff's car with my little one personal bag of belongings. And we took a ride down Highway 58 West on a 3-hour trip. And got about halfway. You know, I was started having what the book calls it was delirium tremens, better known as DTs. And I was about ready to have a grand old dose of those DTs. I begged that deputy sheriff, please stop somewhere and buy me a cold beer. I'm about ready to see spiders and snakes coming across the highway. He said, boy, you better ready to go on DTs, ain't you? I said, well, you know about DTs, because I've had them before. I know where you at. Anyway, he stopped at the store and bought me one 22-ounce beer. And he took his handcuffs off of me. And I drank that one beer, and that was enough to hold me over till we got to where we was going. That saved me from going in a alcoholic seizure, DTs, or whatever you want to call it. And we went the rest of the way down 58 West, and we got to this place, and we pulled up in the back parking lot, went through a set of double doors, walked up 2 flights of steps, and got to the nursing station. And I checked in the detox and got me a shot right here in my arm. And this place was at the Life Center in Galax, Virginia. And I'm forever grateful for this treatment center because this place gave me all the tools I needed, you know. And the whole administration of the people that was working there, there's one of us. They didn't have them big fancy diplomas, and you know they could identify with the patients that came in there. And the counselor I had, he was a cold-blooded dude. He's a retired drill sergeant from Paris Island, South Carolina. He's retired from the Marines. He said, if you ain't alcoholic, don't unpack your stuff. You know, if we sitting there in class, he'd get in my face, tell me, sit down and shut up, you don't know nothing. We want to learn how to get drunk, we'll ask you. And, but I'm glad he did tell me that now, you know, because I didn't know nothing. The only thing I did know how to do was get drunk. And I stayed there for 28 days. And about ready, when I was getting ready to get discharged, he called me in his office and said, what do you think of, you want to go back to South Boston? I said, go back to what? I ain't got nothing to go back to. He said, okay, let me see if I can get you in somewhere. And he called me back in there and said, what do you think about doing a geographical change? I said, sure, I ain't got nothing else to fall back on. Let's go. So they called this guy down at a place called Caring Services in High Point. His name was Leroy Golston. And he said, we got a live one here. You got a bed for him? Leroy said, yeah, we got a bed. Bring him on. And I tell you people, I was terrified when I got to High Point, and I was not comfortable in my own skin. And I got down there, and I checked into the Steel Street house, and I got situated, and I went to a discussion meeting down at the club down on English Road at 5:30. And I walked in there, and my sick alcoholic brain was telling me, it said, had a bunch of people over in that corner talk. I said, look at them, they talking about me. And I went in there and I picked up my chip, and I whitened up this thing for the first 4 months I was in the program. Didn't have no sponsor, hadn't worked not one step. And they told me, don't drink, go to meetings, don't drink, go to meetings. Everything will be peachy and whipped cream. And I thought that's all you had to do, don't drink, go to meetings. But that's all I did for the first 4 months. I whitened up with this thing, and thank God I didn't get drunk. So I used to go to meetings over at New South, and used to go to meetings at the club. Hit a few meetings in Greensboro with Starmount and Henshaw over on Greensboro Road. And so one night I was at the house and the guy asked me, "You want to go with me to a big book study?" I said, "Yeah, where we going?" He said, "We're going to Emerald. I done been everywhere else, but I ain't been there yet. God working behind the scenes on my behalf." We went to a meeting that night, and me and this guy, it's like God putting me and another guy together. That was the night me and my sponsor hooked up. I asked him would he sponsor me, and my biggest fear was I thought he was going to say no, because I done got kicked out of everywhere I ever been. But he didn't say no. He said, "Yeah, I'll sponsor you." He gave me his phone number, and he said, "I want you to call me every day." I did more than call him every day. I called him every day for the first 1,825 days. For the first 5 years I called him. Whether I have direct conversation or not, my job is to unload my stuff on a voicemail. And if I need to talk to him, I'll request for his return call. And today, all I do is leave him a voicemail and keep on going. But the relationship me and my sponsor got today, and he can tell by the tone of my voice there's something going on with me. That's how well he knows me. He knows every nook and cranny. He knows me better than anybody. And so he got me a big book, and he gave me directions on what to do going through the book, and we started working the steps. In that first step, when I put the plug in the jug, everything I had in life was gone. I didn't have nowhere else to go. I done drank up my family, my friends, and my self-respect, and I was unemployable, and the whole 9 yards. And early on, I relied heavily on the GOD to go all the direction in the group of drunks. Because, see, my mind was all fogged up, and it took a right good while for that fog to lift. Where my sanity could be restored, where I am able to make quality decisions. Because the most dangerous playground I got is sitting on top of my head, right in between my ears. In that third step, me and my sponsor, we did it one-on-one. We did the third step prayer together. We held hands, and that was a stepping stone for developing a power greater than myself. But lo and behold, he bought me a notepad and wrote my name with big, bold, black letters. I said, "What's this for?" He said, "Well, you getting ready to do you some writing." I didn't know what he was talking about. He bought me a whole pack of ink pens and that big old notepad. He said, "Get in that book and read the bottom of page 64 and read the rest of that chapter." And that's what I did, and I made my fourth step. And I went as far back as my train of thought will allow me to go back. And I put my fears, my resentments, and my sex conduct down on that paper. All that stuff I had bottled up deep down inside that I swore up and down I'd never tell another human being to ever walk the face of this earth. Secrets that I was going to take to my grave. And I tell you, it hurt just to write it down on paper. So my sponsor called me one day and said, "You got that 4-step ready?" I said, "Yeah, I got it ready. You ready to get together?" And he came and picked me up. We went to his house and sat in his living room. And I thought he was playing a mind game on me. I was confused about something. I was sitting across from him, and he was sitting across from me. And we had an empty chair on the side. I said, "What's that chair for?" He said, that's God's tale. We're going to bring the power into this fifth step. And that's what we did. We brought God into that fifth step. And everything I lashed at to him, every character defect that I had on that fifth step, 90% of it came right back to me. And there was some of them on there that I was powerless over in my early childhood, I might add too. But when I finished doing that fifth step with my sponsor, I felt like a ton of bricks was picked up off of my shoulder. That weight of the world was lifted. You know, 6 and 7 is just two little bitty short paragraphs in the book, but it's got a lot of meat and backbone behind it. You know, I always gonna have character defects to work on. You know, my main one is my anger. I'm a whole lot better than what I used to be. When I first got here, I'd fly off the handle in a heartbeat, but I'm not the same person I was when I came here 11 years ago. And so anyway, make a long story short, I went back to my 4th step, and I made my men's list. First one I put on there was me, and the rest of them mostly family. I wrote down on them, me and my sponsor got together, and we laid them off from the least to the most. Put me down for one, because I got to forgive me before I can forgive anybody else. And I'm going to tell you what my sick alcoholic brain almost did when I was trying to white knuckle this thing by myself. My first 4 months when I was in the program, I wanted to go spend Christmas with my family. And thank God I had a sponsorship to put a block on there. I said, I want to go spend Christmas with my family. They said, no, you don't go nowhere. You don't need to be around your family. And I caught one terrible resentment behind that. Took me a long time to figure out that he told me that for a reason. If I had went back up there then, just 4 months bone dry, I'd have got drunk, and I know I would have. But anyway, cleaning up the records of my past, that's where the sponsorship kicks in. Me and him went to South Boston, Virginia, and first place we stopped was the graveyard, making graveside amends to my mama and daddy. And I tell you, that was a humbling experience. And, you know, my ego got busted, and I sit there and cried like a newborn baby. You know, crying out to my mama, you know, I didn't get my way for not getting what I wanted when I wanted it. Forgiving my daddy for all that physical abuse he inflicted on my body, for all those years that he spent in prison over. But I tell you, that's gut-wrenching. Don't drink and go to meetings, won't hold a candle to that. The only reason I've done it, because I'm willing to go to any length to beat my disease. And I mean that from all the bottom of my heart. We left the graveside and went to my sister's house, and we had something like a little small family reunion. And I got with family members one by one and said, what can I do to make this right? I ain't gonna tell you I'm sorry, because you already know I'm sorry. I said, what can I do to make this right? And we had a good long chat, and the only thing I could do is clean up my side of the street. Now, I might add, has all those resentments gone away where they got against me? No, those resentments are still there. But as long as I keep my side of the street clean, that's the only thing that I'm required to do. You know, 10, 11, and 12 is where I'm at today. I take my spot check inventories when need be. If something crop up, eating my lunch, I know how to get on the telephone and get rid of it. I start practicing my 10 steps when I first get up of the morning, because I don't want to hold that stuff, carrying that stuff around all day. And, you know, I got good balance and I got emotional balance in my life today. You know, and when I start to feel like that I'm dragging, I'm getting burnt out, you know, I stay at home and get some rest and I recharge my batteries. That's how I go about getting some rest, you know, catching up on balance. 12 step, I got a psychic change today as a direct result of working the steps. You know, I got a 180-degree turnaround from the way my life used to be to how it is now. And service work is the backbone of my whole entire sobriety. I'm heavily involved in speaker meetings. I chair lots and lots of speaker meetings. I'm heavily involved in my home group. I'm on the steering committee. And I got countless contacts all over the state of North Carolina, South Carolina, and Virginia. Well, AA members call me and they want speakers and go on road trips, and more road trips. And we do, don't we, Rick? And I got an AA home today. And that thing is like Buckingham Palace compared to where I come from. I got a 1-bedroom apartment in downtown High Point. And I treasure that thing to the extreme. I love my home. You know, I clean up, I sweep and mop my floors. I wash dirty dishes after I cook me a meal. Keep the trash took out. You know, I value my home today. Because, you know, I don't ever want to forget where I came from. The only way I can keep what I got is to give it away. Don't drink and go to meetings is the only part of it. I go to 4 or 5 meetings a week. My foundation is my home group on Tuesday and Friday night. Monday, Thursday, and Saturday night, I'm at the club either getting somebody to speak or I'm chairing speaker meetings. Wednesday and Sundays is my 2 days that's flexible for going out of town, taking people somewhere to go speak somewhere. But anyway, you know, today life is good. As long as I keep on the firing line and doing God's will in my life, everything else will work itself. And I hope I said something tonight that somebody can identify with, somebody can take home with them to put to good use. And thank you, Waylon, for asking me to come speak. Good to see you too, Tom. And thank y'all for listening.